The bright lights focused on Oprah Winfrey as she took center stage at the National Policy Forum. Dressed in an elegant purple pantsuit, she radiated her usual confidence. The audience, filled with policy experts, journalists, and political figures, waited attentively as America's most respected talk show host prepared to deliver her widely discussed lecture on the nation's moral crisis. Behind the curtain, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett stood steady in her navy blue suit, scrolling through her phone with quiet focus. Her team had just sent her an advanced copy of Oprah's speech that had been shared with select media outlets. As Crockett read through it, frustration began to build. Oprah was about to distort her voting record and misrepresent her policy views. Moments earlier, the moderator had introduced Winfrey with glowing admiration, the voice of a generation, a self-made billionaire who understands America's struggles. The audience erupted in applause as Oprah began. "Our leaders have failed us," Oprah declared, her voice strong and clear. "Representatives like Jasmine Crockett push policies that divide instead of unite." Backstage, Crockett's eyes narrowed at the monitor. Her press secretary leaned in and whispered, "We didn't know she was going to call you out directly." Crockett nodded calmly. "It's fine," she said. "I came prepared." This wasn't just another policy event. It was about to become the defining moment when Jasmine Crockett, the rising Texas congresswoman, reminded Oprah Winfrey that fame doesn't mean freedom from accountability. What happened next would leave the audience stunned and reshape both women's public images for years. Before we continue this remarkable exchange, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more political moments that mainstream outlets often miss. The convention hall buzzed with anticipation. Phones were raised, cameras rolling, all eyes fixed on Oprah. For decades, she had been America's trusted voice of empathy, a billionaire icon whose rise from poverty inspired millions. But today was different. She wasn't here to give away cars or interview celebrities. Her message focused on what she called the political division tearing America apart. Winfrey paced the stage with practiced ease, her tone carrying the emotional weight that made her famous. "I've spent my life listening to Americans from all walks of life," she began, "and what I hear now worries me deeply. Politicians like Representative Crockett have abandoned moderation. They speak in extremes, demonize others, and refuse accountability." Large screens showed edited clips from Crockett's congressional hearings, carefully framed to make her passionate advocacy look aggressive and combative. The audience, mostly Winfrey supporters and centrist policymakers, nodded quietly in agreement. "Just last month," Oprah continued, shaking her head, "Representative Crockett blocked a bipartisan bill meant to help working families simply because it didn't meet her demands. This all-or-nothing attitude is why Washington can't move forward." Backstage, Crockett stood composed but tense. At 44, she already had a powerful reputation as an attorney and civil rights advocate before joining Congress. A Harvard law graduate, she had spent years fighting for voting rights and against systemic injustice in Texas courtrooms. For her, politics wasn't ambition, it was service. Her chief of staff handed her a tablet showing social media posts already trending under #OprahWisdom. "They've been setting this up for weeks," he whispered. "Word is, Oprah hasn't even read the bill she's criticizing." Crockett opened the actual legislation on her phone. "She's either twisting the facts or didn't do her homework," she said calmly, though clearly frustrated. "That bill had a hidden amendment that would have removed protections for the most vulnerable communities." She looked up resolute. "We didn't oppose help for families. We opposed the fine print that would have taken it away." A production assistant approached carefully. "Congresswoman, you're on in 3 minutes," her aide reminded her. Ms. Winfrey's team also asked that you stick to the pre-approved questions. Crockett gave a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Of course they did. She adjusted her blazer and glanced at her reflection in a nearby mirror. This wasn't just about defending her record. It was about standing up to a growing trend of celebrities oversimplifying complex issues without understanding their consequences. "The audience isn't ready for this," her press secretary warned. "Neither is Oprah," Crockett replied, slipping her phone into her pocket. On it were screenshots of Winfrey's past contradictory statements. "They're all about to learn that sound bites and edited clips can't compete with facts." As the moderator announced her name, Jasmine Crockett took a deep breath. This wasn't personal. It was about integrity in a political world increasingly shaped by celebrity influence and media distortion. The applause was quieter as Crockett stepped onto the stage with composed confidence. Oprah greeted her with a warm but calculated smile. The contrast was sharp. Winfrey, the global brand with her polished charm. Crockett, the lawyer with her direct honesty. "Representative Crockett, thank you for being here," Oprah began, gesturing toward the chair across from her. "I think we can agree that finding common ground is essential in today's divided world." Crockett sat down, adjusting her microphone deliberately. "Thank you, Ms. Winfrey. I agree, common ground matters, as long as it's based on truth, not misrepresentation." A murmur rippled through the crowd. This wasn't the respectful tone guests usually used with Oprah. Winfrey tilted her head, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "It sounds like you're on the defensive before we've even started. Is that part of the problem with compromise in Congress?" The tension thickened. Crockett didn't flinch. "I'm not defensive, Ms. Winfrey. I'm being direct. Your viewers deserve clarity about the claims you made before I came on." Turning to the audience, she continued, "Ms. Winfrey implied that I blocked a bipartisan bill designed to help working families. What What she didn't mention is that the bill included an amendment cutting childcare subsidies for over 300,000 families to fund corporate tax breaks. Oprah's smile faltered as she tried to regain control. Well, politics often involves compromise, doesn't it? Compromise shouldn't mean sacrificing those who need help the most, Crockett replied firmly. And maybe your audience should also know that your own production company stood to benefit from those same tax breaks. A sharp gasp echoed through the room. The moderator tried to step in. Maybe we should— No, Crockett interrupted, raising a hand. Transparency matters. Ms. Winfrey framed this as a discussion on American values, but didn't mention her financial stake in the policies she supports. The large screens behind them, intended to show pre-approved clips, suddenly displayed Crockett's own slides, financial records showing Oprah's investments in companies that would profit from the bill. Backstage, Crockett's team had overridden the planned visuals. The technical director rushed to fix the feed, but it was too late. The audience had seen the conflict of interest. Oprah's composure slipped. This is highly inappropriate, she said firmly. We're here for a civil conversation about unity, not accusations. Civil doesn't mean avoiding the truth, Crockett replied, her tone gaining strength. Unity starts with honesty about who benefits from these policies. The moderator, visibly uneasy, tried to move on. Let's discuss the broader issue of political division, they suggested. Gladly, Crockett said, taking out her phone. I have some quotes from Ms. Winfrey that show the problem. She displayed a set of Winfrey's conflicting statements about compromise and corporate accountability. Offstage, Oprah's team signaled frantically to stop her. A producer whispered to the moderator, who quickly announced, "We'll take a short break." Are we breaking because I'm presenting facts? Crockett asked, arching a brow. Her mic caught the comment and the audience stirred. As the lights rose for an unplanned intermission, social media exploded. Hashtags like #CrockettExposesOprah trended instantly. Clips of the confrontation spread quickly, splitting viewers between shock at seeing Oprah challenged and admiration for Crockett's composure. Backstage, Oprah's team scrambled. This isn't what we agreed on, her publicist told the organizer. She was supposed to stick to the approved topics. Meanwhile, Crockett calmly sipped water in her dressing room, scanning her notes. They'll try to cut my mic, she said to her staff. Make sure plan B is ready. When the break ended, the mood had completely shifted. Viewers who came for Oprah's trademark inspiration were now bracing for a political showdown. Oprah's team handed out a new format, structured questions, 2-minute answers, no interruptions. It was clear damage control, but Crockett was ready. She carried printed evidence and began handing copies to reporters in the front row. What are you doing? Oprah asked, her mic still live. Crockett looked her in the eye, making sure the truth isn't edited out. The cameras rolled again, and the tension rose. The moderator tried to restore order with a neutral question about infrastructure, but the moment had already shifted. Millions were now witnessing something rare, Oprah Winfrey being directly challenged. Before we continue, Crockett said calmly, we need to clear the air. Ms. Winfrey made false claims about my voting record, and the audience deserves clarity. Oprah's warm smile faded. I think we've moved past that point, Congresswoman. Let's focus on solutions. Accountability isn't hostility, Crockett replied. Solutions built on falsehoods help no one. She turned to the audience. I deeply respect Ms. Winfrey's success. Her rise from poverty to global influence is inspiring. But with influence comes responsibility, especially when advocating policies that affect millions. A soft murmur of agreement spread through the hall. Sensing the shift, Winfrey tried to regain control. What Americans want, she began, is for leaders to rise above division and work together. I've spoken with presidents and everyday citizens alike, and what I've learned is, with all due respect, Crockett interrupted, what Americans truly want is the truth. She lifted a document from her folder and held it up. This is the actual text of the bill you criticized me for opposing. Section 43 removed healthcare provisions for vulnerable communities, while Section 119 added new tax benefits for major media corporations, including your own. The display behind them lit up, showing the highlighted portions. Your company, Harpo Productions, would have gained about $247 million in tax advantages from this clause. Yet you portrayed my opposition as denying aid to families. The crowd reacted with gasps and murmurs. Oprah's face shifted from surprise to irritation, then settled into a tight smile. I think you're missing the bigger picture, Congresswoman, she said, regaining her calm. Policy discussions require nuance, not— I couldn't agree more about nuance, Crockett interjected firmly, which is why your earlier remarks were so disappointing. They lacked exactly that. She lifted her phone. May I replay your statement for clarity? Without waiting for permission, Crockett pressed play. Oprah's voice filled the hall. Politicians like Representative Crockett have abandoned moderation. They speak in absolutes, vilify their opponents, and refuse to admit when they're wrong. Crockett looked directly at Winfrey. That doesn't sound nuanced, Miss Winfrey. It sounds like the same divisive language you say you oppose. The moderator tried to step in, but Crockett stayed calm and continued. Here's my main concern. With a platform as large as yours, every statement carries weight. When those statements lack context or accuracy, they don't just affect reputations, they mislead citizens about how their government really works. The once energetic audience had gone silent, focused on the exchange. Seeing the shift, Winfrey tried to return to her strength, emotional connection. I understand your frustration, Congresswoman. Maybe we started on the wrong note, she said smoothly. What I really want is to understand your vision. Please explain why you believe your approach is right for America. It was classic Oprah, turning confrontation into conversation. But Crockett wasn't looking for emotion. I appreciate that, Miss Winfrey, but this isn't about our feelings, it's about accuracy, she said, speaking directly to the audience. When public figures talk about politics, they must be informed. She continued, the bill in question would help some working families, but at a cost to others. It proposed funding new programs by cutting existing ones that serve our most vulnerable citizens. After a brief pause, she added, and here's what your audience may not know. Just 3 weeks before you publicly supported this bill, your investment group bought large shares in companies that benefit directly from these changes. Crockett held up financial disclosure papers with highlighted sections. These are the same companies sponsoring this forum. The room exploded in reaction. Reporters in the front row snapped photos of the documents she had handed out earlier. Oprah's staff rushed forward, signaling the crew. This is inappropriate and possibly libelous, Winfrey protested, her voice tight as cameras flashed. Real frustration showed through her calm exterior. You're making serious claims based on weak connections, Oprah said firmly. These are public records, Miss Winfrey, Crockett replied evenly. SEC filings, congressional documents, and your own public statements. Everything I've shared is verifiable. The moderator, visibly uneasy, tried to call for another break, but Crockett went on. The American people deserve leaders who make decisions based on results, not popularity. And they deserve media figures who do research before shaping public opinion. Turning to the camera, she added, dialogue matters, accountability matters, and most of all, facts matter. The production director, reacting to frantic signals from Oprah's team, suddenly cut to an unscheduled commercial break, but it was too late. The live stream had captured everything. Clips spread instantly across social media under hashtags like hashtag Crockett Challenge and hashtag Knocks Oprah Accountable, trending nationwide. In less than 15 minutes, Jasmine Crockett had done what few ever had. She challenged Oprah Winfrey on her own stage with proof that couldn't be ignored. The balance of power hadn't just shifted, it had completely reversed. During the long break, tension filled the backstage area. Oprah's advisors huddled around her, whispering urgent plans. Just a few feet away, Crockett stood alone, calmly reviewing her notes as if this were another day in Congress. When the team announced a 2-minute countdown to return to air, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Viewers waited to see how America's most experienced interviewer would recover. When the broadcast resumed, Oprah had regained her composure. Decades of media experience guided her tone. Before we continue, she began evenly, I'd like to acknowledge something important. Congresswoman Crockett has raised valid points about the accuracy of some statements I made earlier. Turning toward Crockett, Oprah added, while we may see this bill's impact differently, I should have been clearer about certain provisions. It wasn't a full apology, but the admission shocked the crowd. Oprah Winfrey rarely conceded anything. Crockett nodded graciously. Thank you for that clarification, Miss Winfrey. I believe we both want what's best for the American people, even if our methods differ. The next 40 minutes were calmer and more thoughtful, focused on facts and mutual respect. Still, Oprah's image as untouchable had been shaken. When the cameras turned off, the real story began spreading online. Within hours, hashtag Crockett Checkmate became the nation's top trend. Clips showing Crockett's evidence and Oprah's reaction flooded the internet. Conservative outlets ran headlines like Congresswoman brings receipts, leaves Oprah speechless, and Crockett exposes celebrity politics. Progressive media also weighed in, calling it a lesson in media accountability and a reminder to prepare before entering policy debates. Political analysts quickly joined the discussion. On CNN, senior correspondent Jessica Winters said, this wasn't just a politician defending herself. It was a direct challenge to how celebrity influence shapes public debate in America. Her co-panelist Marcus Johnson added, Oprah has interviewed presidents and world leaders, but I've never seen her so unprepared. The question now is what this means for her influence moving forward. By nightfall, the story had moved beyond politics. It became a cultural event. News shows covered it under headlines like Oprah's toughest interview yet. Entertainment Tonight even brought in body language experts to analyze every moment. Inside Harpo Productions, reports described a tense atmosphere. Oprah and her team held an emergency meeting. One insider told Page 6, she's taking this very personally. In nearly 40 years of broadcasting, Oprah has never been blindsided like this. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett's profile skyrocketed. Her office said calls from major news networks poured in nonstop. Her social media following grew by over 500,000 in one day. Political figures from across the country began reaching out. More importantly, policy experts started examining the bill at the center of the debate. The Washington Post released an analysis confirming most of Crockett's interpretation and highlighting the conflicts of interest she exposed. 3 days later, Oprah posted a statement on her social media accounts. Throughout my career, I've valued truth, growth, and learning. My recent discussion with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett made me reflect deeply. While I entered that conversation with good intentions, I now see that I didn't fully understand the legislation or disclose all relevant connections. I've always believed that when we know better, we do better, and this is my moment to do better. The message drew mixed responses. Some praised praised her accountability. Others said it was too late. Then came an unexpected turn. A week later, 23 major celebrities and influencers signed an open letter pledging to uphold new standards for political commentary. The responsibility and influence pledge required signers to reveal financial interests, consult experts before speaking on policy, and clearly separate opinion from fact. The lead signer was Oprah Winfrey herself. "Sometimes our greatest growth comes from our hardest moments," she wrote in the pledge's introduction. "My exchange with Congresswoman Crockett revealed blind spots in how I discuss policy. I've chosen to learn from it and help set new standards for public discussion." For Jasmine Crockett, the aftermath brought both opportunity and pressure. Her national profile soared, but so did scrutiny. Conservative groups that had praised her began seeking her alliance, while some progressives worried she had gone too far in confronting a beloved figure. Crockett handled it calmly. On MSNBC's Morning Joe, she said, "This wasn't about left versus right, or me versus Ms. Winfrey. It was about one principle. In policy debates, accuracy must come before influence. I respect Oprah's achievements, but my concern was about misrepresenting a bill that affects real people." 2 weeks later, real changes followed. News outlets started including clearer explanations of policy details. Celebrities spoke more carefully about politics, often noting when they were sharing opinions. Most notably, the controversial bill was reintroduced with major revisions. It still supported working families but removed cuts to vital programs. The corporate tax breaks Crockett had criticized were deleted. The bill's sponsor publicly thanked the Winfrey-Crockett exchange for exposing its flaws. "Sometimes it takes a public spotlight to reveal problems buried in legislation," said Senator Michael Thornton. The revised bill is stronger because of that discussion. 6 months later, Jasmine Crockett delivered the keynote at Harvard Kennedy School's conference on media, celebrity, and political discourse. Her speech, "Accountability in the Age of Influence," drew a full audience. "The democratization of media has given more people a voice than ever," she said, "but amplification without verification can weaken the democracy it aims to protect. Whether you're a first-term congresswoman or a billionaire icon, the rule is the same. Claims require evidence, and influence demands responsibility." In the front row sat Oprah Winfrey, listening closely. The two were later photographed talking and smiling at the reception, though neither revealed what was said. A year later, they announced a joint project, a free online course on media literacy and policy analysis to help Americans better understand how news, entertainment, and politics intersect. The first module was titled "Bringing Receipts: How to Verify Claims from Any Source." The Oprah Crockett moment became part of popular culture. "Do you have the Crockett receipts for that?" turned into a catchphrase meaning, "Can you prove it?" Debate teams studied the exchange as an example of preparation and precision. More importantly, it set a new standard for public conversation. No platform was beyond fact-checking. No claim was beyond verification. What began as a confrontation became something greater, a turning point in how influence and accountability coexist in American life. The message was clear. In an age of instant communication and celebrity power, facts still matter. Preparation still matters. And as Jasmine Crockett proved beside one of the world's most powerful women, courage backed by evidence matters most of all.